Good morning, everyone. This is Kathleen Wells, yours truly, and my co-host Harry Fear is joining me today on our debut show, Palestine Today. Palestine Today. Our focus, Palestine, and everything regarding the Palestinians. So I want to say good morning to KCAA listeners, and good afternoon and good evening to those listening to us on the live stream link. You know what? Driving into the station today from Los Angeles into San Bernardino, I could not believe on a weekday, Saturday, that there was actually traffic. I mean, nothing's worse than traffic, right? But something is worse than traffic. What's worse than traffic is how the Palestinians are being treated in Palestine. And that's what Palestine Today is focused on, how the Palestinians are treated and what's going on in Palestine. So I want to bring on my co-host, Harry Fear. Hi, Harry.
Thanks for having me on again. And this is a pleasure. Great to be on with you. This is the beginning of something great.
Yeah, I think it's groundbreaking, don't you?
I do.
Well, there are not many stations in the United States that carry information about Palestine and Palestinians. You never hear their voice. You never know what's going on with them. You definitely don't get it in the mainstream media. I know that Jeff Blankford talks about it on his radio show in Mendocino County, California, and I know that Don Bastanti talks about it on his show on KPFK on Sundays in Los Angeles. So this is rare for us to have a show.
This is great. We'll be able to hear from Palestinians regularly as a matter of routine. When I'm back in Gaza, which will be not so far away in the future, I'll also be able to make radio reports as well for our program there. So we'll have something special.
We'll have something special. So, Harry, tell me where are you now, actually?
Well, actually, I'm in downtown Cairo in Egypt at the moment. So I finished recently my international talking tour. So since I was last on the program, basically, obviously, there was the recent 8-day war, which saw almost 180 Palestinians killed and a handful of Israelis. Following this, I was asked to go to various places around the world and to give talks and lectures and interviews about what I had seen, about reporting under these circumstances, and about what actually happened. So I went to a bunch of countries, giving my impressions and trying to communicate the gravity of what happened in November.
Okay, so Harry, why don't you give us some specifics about your world talking tour? Give the listeners some specifics.
Well, I mean, the purpose of this tour was to enlighten people to the gravity of the horror of what happened during that 8-day war, to educate them about the details, to inspire them to care and to do something about it, generally to wake people up. And in terms of these talks, generally they were an hour to 2 hours in length, and if people hadn't laughed, cried, smiled, shaken their heads, nodded their heads, and clapped by the end, I considered it a failure. Generally speaking, people did do all of those things, and I tried to provide, with images, music, videos, and etc., kind of full spectrum impression of what the war was like. Generally, the receptions were incredible, actually, Kathleen. We had a very diverse ranges of audience, age, socioeconomic background, religious background, everything, and in various different countries. So I started off in Germany and then in Austria, two countries which are most let's say, conservatively preoccupied with Israel, of course. Then I went to the Netherlands. Then I went to Canada and the USA. Then I did Malaysia, New Zealand, Australia, and back to the UK, my home country. And this was an extraordinary experience to meet thousands of people face to face, to talk to them about what had happened, to move people, to really feel like they could care about what had happened and to really feel the pain of what had happened and the hope of what's going on and the steadfastness of the Palestinians to try and get their freedom back. So it was very successful and fulfilling, frankly. And I was able to do at least a few dozen talks around the world to different audiences at schools, high schools, corporations, generally universities and non-governmental organizations, campaigning groups. And one of the most special things was to speak at primary schools and to put it all in the language that children could understand. It's a playground bully beating up, the weaker child in the corner of the playground, this kind of thing, and to communicate with this kind of audience. And then to have, Palestinians in the audiences in, for example, Canada, and come up to me at the end of the talk and say, that man you talked about who was killed during the war in this incident, he was a distant relative of mine, and this is a Palestinian refugee decades ago. To come up and to say that to me is really moving, because it drives home the relevance of the fact that there are millions of Palestinians across the world.
So let's see. I'd like you to touch on your observations in terms of how do you feel that American audiences, do you feel that they're adequately informed? What was their perception? And compare that to, like, audiences in Europe.
Well, this is the number one great reason why we're doing the program, because frankly, according to my impression, the American audience is far behind that of even Canada and certainly Europe with respect to knowledge about what's afflicting Gaza or Palestine. Frankly, it really is behind. And that's why it's such a great opportunity for us to have this program to bring it to the fore. Generally speaking, the quality and quantity of the audiences in the United States were smaller. In Europe, there is much more of an infrastructure in terms of solidarity, campaigning, and awareness for what's going on in Palestine. Really, it's developed, and the UK, and particularly my home city of Oxford, is considered by the supporters of Israel as the kind of hotspot of anti-Israel campaigning. So you can see from that alternative analysis that there really is a fore in Western Europe. My impression of Canada was I was extremely impressed by the level of energy and strategy that's going on in the campaigning circles in Canada. But it's more polarized in the sense that there are staunch pro-Israel campaigners and staunch pro-Palestinian campaigners, whereas in the UK we don't really have these days staunch pro-Israel supporters who are full-time campaigners or involved in campaigning. They've kind of died out, so to speak.
Well, that's interesting. So what's wrong with Americans is the question I want to ask you. What's wrong with us? I mean, hello.
I guess that the United States has, on the other hand, a more advanced system of, let's say, entertainment with respect to what people's lifestyles comprise of. So people are perhaps less concerned and preoccupied with global and world matters of injustice and conscience than in other parts of the world. That would be my first guess.
And also our media is controlled by pro-Israel forces. It's dominated and controlled by pro-Israel forces. It's everything you get in the media is pro-Israel, the one-sided perspective of the whole incident. I think that's true.
It's a kind of cancerous influence. It's absolutely dominating to the extent that in the United States, in my experience of going around all of these countries recently, the United States media is by far the most pronounced in terms of this extraordinary pro-Israel bias. It doesn't cover it. Love affair covers it. It really was striking, and again, it brings home this strange idea of what objectivity and partiality is. When you go around the world and see different audiences and different people and hear what their standpoints are and the standpoints and ideologies of the medias, you start to see that every country, every class, every group of people has its own bias, its own signature of understanding, its own worldview. And certainly in the British context, where so much time and energy and respect is given to the idea of impartiality and objectivity, this really blows that idea up. Because you see that, in the United States, it's so simplified, the bias that supports Israel. In the United Kingdom, it's more nuanced. But certainly in the United States, it's a kind of full spectrum, thorough, broadsheet, blanket support of Israel, in terms of the agenda of the news even.
Right, full throttle support for Israel. That's all. I mean, even when I talk to people who have like a cursory knowledge, they have no information whatsoever as to what's actually taking place. They do not know that the Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed by the Israelis. It's as if, it's similar to what took place with the Native Americans. So I ask a lot of people, I say, if you were living during the time when the Native Americans, when First Nations people were being ethnically cleansed, would you be silent? Would you say nothing about that?
Exactly. That's the same in Canada with the Idle No More movement. It was going on while I was giving my talks. It's very moving to see people in some numbers care about these issues. And that's what we're relying on, is people to care and to want to know.
People to care and to want to know. And so since it's rare for American audiences to be aware of what's actually taking place, I want to thank KCAA and I want to thank Fred Lundgren for giving us an opportunity to put this program on Palestine Today. I think that's progressive on his part, Fred Lundgren's part, and also not only progressive, but it's also in tune with the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and in tune with broadcasting standards and ethics. And it's rare. I think it's rare.
It is rare, which is sad, but someone's got to start somewhere, so this is great. Thanks to the supporters.
Yeah, this is a great start. So I think in about, we've got 5 more minutes before we go to a break. So we've got 5 minutes. Why don't you tell us in the next 5 minutes what's some updates with regards to Gaza, what's been going on?
Well, the sad thing about the situation in Gaza or the West Bank, the other bit of Palestine that's left, is that it goes on and it goes on and it goes on, and the frequency of reports of oppression, aggression, imprisonment, and etc., and the efforts of resistance, armed and non-armed, non-violent, it goes on and it goes on, and the frequency rather is increasing actually. It's almost difficult to make a judgment as to what bits of news are most important, but obviously in the American context, the death of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez is of some significance. Obviously, he died on Tuesday from cancer. Chavez was a long-time supporter of the Palestinian people and especially a vocal critic of Israel's treatment of Gaza, including recently. There was a vigil in Gaza on Thursday, according to Memo, in the Unknown Soldiers Square in downtown Gaza City, in Gaza Strip. Palestinians held a vigil and identified Chavez's firm and heroic stance in supporting the Palestinians. Only last year, after and during the November attack, he explicitly referred to the Israeli operation as savage, state-terroristic, and talked about the costing the lives of vulnerable, innocent children, women, and the elderly. This was a figure that was very, very vocally supportive of the Palestinians, probably one of the most qualitatively supportive leaders in the world that's not Palestinian. So this is of some significance. So there was a vigil on Thursday for that. Now, there was, obviously yesterday, International Women's Day. Now, according to the IMEMC, Israel still holds 48 Palestinian women in its jails. According to Memo, since 1967, 15,000 Palestinian women have been held in these jails. The Palestinian Minister of Women's Affairs has said that the occupation authorities practice physical and psychological torture against Palestinian female prisoners. They lock them up with Israeli criminals who always attack and injure them. So it's going on, and it's going on, and it's going on. After the break, we'll be able to talk more about what's going on extremely recently with regard to ceasefire breaches and violence in Gaza and the West Bank.
Yeah, I want to touch on that, because when you were last on a few months back, we were talking. There was actually the assault from Israel into Gaza. You were there in Gaza, and then a ceasefire was entered. So we're going to touch on that. But before we go, we'll touch on that on the other side of the break. But before we go to the break, I want to ask you about women being in prison in Israeli jails. What types of offenses do you typically see women committing that requires them being in prison for?
The situation with the incarceration of women or any civilians in the West Bank, it falls down into various grave issues of breaching certainly international law. Women are often taken into the Israeli territory under a breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention. In other words, Israel is taking its prisoners back into the home territory rather than the occupied territory. So this transfer of prisoners is a breach of the law itself. Then the women or any civilians in this military legal system are then subjected to just that. Not a normal legal system, but a military legal system. They don't have normal access to lawyers. They don't have normal access to any kind of norms of judicial, reaction. And they're kept in terrible conditions, as you hear from this quote from the minister, alongside Israeli rapists, and etc., and etc. So the point is that the conditions are absolutely dire, and the actual causes of imprisonment are also absolutely extraordinary, in the sense that Palestinian women or any Palestinians can be taken at night, for example, in night raids, and incarcerated quite arbitrarily with very little or no evidence, basically on a whim by Israeli occupation soldiers or the occasional soldier in a bad mood or his commander, and kept actually indefinitely in Israeli jail. So when I was in Gaza last time, I was making an interview with Hannah Shalaby, a female prisoner who was able to get out by hunger striking. She's one of the most well-known female hunger strikers of human history, actually. And she was able to break out. The charges put against her is that she was in some way involved in terrorism, etc. Generally, the whole very strange, elastic term, security. This is the general imprisonment and incarceration reason.
Breaches of security. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back from the break, you have some treats. You have something you want to play for us. So we'll play those things. We'll talk about the breaches of the ceasefire, what has resulted since they've been breached, or have they been breached? I don't know how I'm putting this correctly or not. And also we'll open up the phone line. So that call-in number it's a toll-free number, and also folks can call in on Skype. It's 1-888-909-1050. So at the half hour, we'll open up the phone lines, call in with questions and comments for Harry, and we'll be right back.
Fascinated by the Middle East, but worried that U.S. foreign policy may lead yet to another war? Do you care about civil rights? For the past 30 years, the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs has brought its readers the real news, minus the corporate media spin. Read about Palestinians trying to survive the world's largest occupation. Learn how your hard-earned tax dollars fund that illegal occupation. Find out how much your members of Congress has received from pro-Israel PACs, and much, much more. Visit the Washington Report's website, www.wrmea.org, or call 888-881-5861 to request a free sample copy. Better yet, subscribe. It's only $29 for 9 issues. Mention Palestine today and get a bonus gift. KCAA.
Can you smell the aroma of sweet, delicious fruit and flaky, melt-in-your-mouth crust? What is that? It's Cobblermania. Cobblermania is a specialty dessert company founded several years ago that sells delicious fruit cobblers that are baked daily and sweetened with diabetic-friendly agave. Agave, you ask? Yes. It's like sugar, but not sugar, and better than sugar. Cobblermania cobblers are sold at the Torrance, Hollywood, Culver City, San Dimas, Marina Del Rey Farmers Market. Also, apple and peach are sold daily at the Golden Bird in Los Angeles. You know Golden Bird that sells the fried chicken? At 83rd and Western, daily apple and peach cobblers. And yes, guess what? They're coming to the Pomona Fairplex Truck Fest. In fact, they're there right now, Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Gate 1. Some of the favorites: peach, apple, mango, blueberry peach, blackberry, blackberry, apple, white peach. If you go to the Pomona Truck Fest Gate 1 on Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and mention me, Kathleen, you'll get something special. You don't want to miss it. I've had them. They're delicious.
Playgrounds for Palestine is a non-for-profit 501c3 organization dedicated to upholding the Palestinian child's rights to play. This is a right enshrined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. We operate through a volunteer board and staff, the generosity of our supporters, and a lot of heart. To date, Playgrounds for Palestine has constructed 15 playgrounds in Palestine, as well as refugee camps in Lebanon and Syria. To contribute to this most worldly cause, please go to our website at www.playgroundsforpalestine.org playgroundsforpalestine.org or send a check to Playgrounds for Palestine, P.O. Box 559, Yardley, Pennsylvania 19067 at www.playgroundsforpalestine.org.
Join the conversation now. Call toll-free at 888-909-1050. That's 1-888-909-1050.
Welcome back. It's yours truly, Kathleen, and my co-host, Harry Fear. This is Palestine Today. So, Harry, talk to me about the ceasefires. How do I want to frame that? Let me look at my notes for a second.
Well,
since
the ceasefire came into place, it's not actually ever come into place, frankly, Kathleen. It's come into place in terms of what the world has accepted as reality. But actually, in reality, there's never been a ceasefire because within hours, Israel had already broken the ceasefire. And this ceasefire came into place the end of November, ending the recent 8-day war of November. Now, since then, there have been, according to the Occupied Palestine blog site, which has got some famous status, there have been at least 111 breaches of the ceasefire. There have been 4 Palestinians killed, close to 100 injured, at least 13 incursions into Gaza on the ground, Palestinian fishermen having suffered at least 30 attacks on their fishing exercises. Now, the Western media has failed to report on many or even most of these aggressive actions. British journalist Ben White writes about this. This fits with a familiar and disturbing pattern where a regional, quote, period of calm is exclusively defined in terms of attacks on Israelis. Calm, from this perspective, means security for Israelis, but more dead and injured Palestinians. Mm-hmm. So that's basically what's been going on, Kathleen. I just want to play an audio clip from something which happened yesterday, actually, in the West Bank in Jerusalem. And yesterday, a Palestinian cameraman was injured. He was struck in the face by Israeli force just outside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, just inside the compound. His name has been confirmed as Attar Owasaid. So I'll just play the video of that now.
Okay.
There were clashes at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound yesterday, Friday, with Israeli occupation forces storming the compound, basically with their feet and etc., desecrating clean places and etc., which is obviously an insult to those worshippers and etc. and etc. There are reports also that mosques were Qurans were trampled on, etc. And so we'll just listen to an interview that I conducted with a Palestinian, Wafa Abu Rahma. She's an English teacher and fixer involved in the Palestinian media. She'll talk a little bit about the ceasefire breaches in Gaza and how this is all a pattern of continued violence against Palestinians.
Okay.
Thanks very much for talking to me. I wondered, could you tell me a little bit about the recent breaches of the ceasefire by Israeli forces against Gaza?
Yes, I want to illustrate first, I want to highlight the idea that Israel has been violating the truce and violating the ceasefire, and even after a very, very limited and short period, of holding this agreement, with the Palestinian side. Many attacks happened on the east of Gaza Strip. There were many injuries and even many deaths among Palestinians, and still the people of the buffer zone are suffering a lot. Many attacks on the farmers, and many they deprive them from even practicing the simplest things of life matters there. And Israel did not basically stop, but the Palestinians somehow they did their best stick to this agreement. And the world is hearing nowadays about the prisoners and the hunger strikers and finally the death of Jaradat, like a prisoner in the Israeli jails. Some Palestinian political factions said that the truce became in a danger to the ceasefire, and we might start violating it ourselves. Sorry. And I think they fired 2 Grad rockets towards the Israeli lands, which was like the Israelis considered it as an official violation of the ceasefire, regardless of the very, very big number of violations they did before and very operations.
I want to ask you, Wafa, if we compare the situation in Gaza today, after the ceasefire, after the recent war, if we compare the situation today to how it was, let's say, 6 months ago, could you tell us what's changed?
Basically, nothing changed, and I think that Israel is just going on the let me say, the stream of an escalation. And for me, I think things are going to get much worse and complicated because the Israelis are really stubborn. They don't intend basically to maintain safety or to maintain peace in the region. And they continue violating whatever they say they're going to stick to. And the Palestinians, on the other hand, are not going to keep silent anymore. And especially because of things are happening nowadays in the West Bank and Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Thank you very much for your time. So I spoke to Wafa earlier today. As you heard, she said she doesn't think things are going to get any better over the coming weeks. So it's important that we have this program.
Yeah, it's important that we have this program. So you said since there's been 111, was that the number you gave, breaches?
Yeah, at least 111 according to the Occupy Palestine blog.
And yet we hear nothing in the mainstream media here in the United States about those breaches of the ceasefire. We hear nothing. So the question I have for you, do you think that this is an attempt to trigger a third intifada?
I think that Israel always wants to have evidence, quote unquote, that the Palestinians don't want peace, that the Palestinians are violent and etc. And it can rely on the Western media putting any clashes, reporting those in a light that makes the Palestinians look like they were the aggressive ones, or certainly muddies the water so no one understands what's really going on. So Israel can get away with such a great deal of media impunity that really it can continue to steal land and resources in the West Bank, continue to imprison Gaza and etc. And that's really its program. The current trajectory is, and Wafa said, things are going to get worse and worse. On the one hand, that's what I think. It's stealing more and more land and resources on a daily basis. The oppression continues. In many cases in the West Bank, right now it's getting worse and worse. It's not looking good. In terms of deliberately trying to invoke a second intifada, I'm not sure about that, actually. But certainly this plays into some context with regard to the regional visit by the President Obama, and exactly what the politics and, let's say, theatre of his visit will be, and the context of what's going on between Israel and the Palestinians at that time. So an escalation in clashes between Palestinians and Israeli troops in Jerusalem or in the West Bank will have some effect, I think, on what Obama is forced to say or do.
Yeah, so President Obama is expected to visit Israel and the West Bank in spring, possibly March 20th. So what are the rumblings? What are you hearing?
Well, we heard, according to the World Tribune and according to an unnamed Israeli source, Obama is actually going to do something good in the sense that he's apparently going to be explicitly clear to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he expects some kind of manifest improvement in Israel's actions and treatment to the Palestinians. So that could be anything from the slowing down of settlement, building building that's illegal settling in the West Bank, occupied Palestinian territories according to law. So the slowing down of that settling, or the closure of the settlements, or even, according to one article, one interpretation of that source, a total withdrawal from the West Bank by the Israeli occupying force. So, the significance of Obama's visit is huge, actually.
Yeah, I think it will be significant, but the likelihood of anything, I'm not optimistic. You sound optimistic, Harry, that it's actually...
We've got to remain optimistic. On the one hand, there's no evidence to think things are going to get any better, but on the other hand, there are always surprising victories. And actually, I'm not sure that Barack Obama really, is happy for Palestinians to be oppressed, killed, bombed, and etc. I think that he is totally, this is personally, I think he's totally involved with politics to the extent that he's lost any strength as the leader to take a stand, but that he personally would like to see a resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. So we'll see what happens and how much strength he can show as a leader in actually asserting a position.
Because a lot of the things that statements that he's made hasn't necessarily been supportive of the Palestinians. I think that he has sort of towed the line, and when you get involved in the system, the political system, when you're embroiled in that, there isn't much there isn't much you can do, and it's been many presidents that have even Jimmy Carter. I think he wrote a book. I can't recall the name, but after he got out of office, I don't doubt where his heart is necessarily because of the book, but there's nothing that can be done. And as you said, despite what politicians feel personally, their land continues to be occupied and gobbled up by settlements. So
exactly. Obama has made it clear in his speeches and rhetoric that he stands with Israelis and not Palestinians.
Yeah.
At the same time, the official policy being that they support, negotiations between the two sides as if it's a 50-50 game. We'll see what happens, behind closed doors with what he says to Netanyahu. And we know that the Western leaders, including Obama, do not really like this Israeli prime minister. So we'll see what happens.
We're going to take a break now. I want to give out the call-in number. The number is toll-free, 1-888-909-1050. You can call in with questions or comments. And on the other end, we'll open up the phone line. So we're going to break right now. We'll be right back. Thanks.
From your home and your history. We are the people, and this is our time. Stand up, sing out for Palestine.
Are you fascinated by the Middle East, but worried that U.S. foreign policy may lead yet to another war? Do you care about civil rights? For the past 30 years, the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs has brought its readers the real news, minus the corporate media spin. Read about Palestinians trying to survive the world's largest occupation. Learn how your hard-earned tax dollars fund that illegal occupation. Find out how much your members of Congress has received from pro-Israel PACs, and much, much more. Visit the Washington Report's website, www.wrmea.org, or call 888-881-5861 to request a free sample copy. Better yet, subscribe. It's only $29 for 9 issues. Mention Palestine today and get a bonus gift.
KCAA.
Can you smell the aroma of sweet, delicious fruit and flaky, melt-in-your-mouth crust? What is that? It's Cobblermania. Cobblermania is a specialty dessert company founded several years ago that sells delicious fruit cobblers that are baked daily and sweetened with diabetic-friendly agave. Agave, you ask? Yes. It's like sugar, but not sugar, and better than sugar. Cobblermania cobblers are sold at the Torrance, Hollywood, Culver City, San Dimas, Marina Del Rey Farmers Market. Also, apple and peach are sold daily at the Golden Bird in Los Angeles. You know Golden Bird that sells the fried chicken? At 83rd and Western, daily apple and peach cobblers. And yes, guess what? They're coming to the Pomona Fairplex Truck Fest. In fact, they're there right now, Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Gate 1. Some of the favorites: peach, apple, mango, blueberry peach, blackberry, blackberry, apple, white peach. If you go to the Pomona Truck Fest Gate 1 on Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and mention me, Kathleen, you'll get something special. You don't want to miss it. I've had them. They're delicious.
Playgrounds for Palestine is a non-for-profit 501c3 organization dedicated to upholding the Palestinian child's rights to play. This is a right enshrined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. We operate through a volunteer board and staff, the generosity of our supporters, and a lot of heart. To date, Playgrounds for Palestine has constructed 15 playgrounds in Palestine, as well as refugee camps in Lebanon and Syria. To contribute to this most worldly cause, please go to our website at www.playgroundsforpalestine.org or send a check to Playgrounds for Palestine, P.O. Box 559, Yardley, Pennsylvania 19067 at www.playgroundsforpalestine.org.
Join the conversation now. Call toll-free at 888-909-1050. That's 1-888-909-1050.
Welcome back. This is Palestine Today. I'm Kathleen Wells and my co-host Harry Fear, and we're going to take a phone call now from David in Vancouver. Hi, David.
Hi, Kathleen. Hello, Harry. Thanks for taking my call. You both alluded to, and in fact, you definitely pointed to the problem with our presidents in the United States being rather hamstrung by the political system. And the reason for that, for your callers that don't know this, is because Zionists have for over 100 years been infiltrating various governments throughout the world, first in order to set up the political groundwork to establish to illegally, by the way, establish the State of Israel in 1948, and then they've moved their allegiances around to whichever governments will give them the most power. And currently, that is the U.S. empire. Our military prowess keeps them protected. Our Congress, which they've totally infiltrated and controlled, not only with the dual citizen Jewish American congressmen and senators, but with they've aligned with the neocon element that has taken over the government during the Bush administration. So they've got huge political clout in this country. They've got huge political clout in the media. They focus their attention wherever it'll do them the most good, and that is America, because America is what keeps the Israelis doing what they're doing, all the illegal acts, including murder on a regular basis, with total impunity. The U.S. stands up at the United Nations and vetoes any actions taken by the world community against Israel for its appalling behavior. But the United States holds up its hand with its veto power and says, no, we're not going to hear that problem next, and they go down the agenda. But,
you actually took a breath. I heard you take a breath, David. You went,
okay, take a breath. Sorry. There's so, as you know, there's so little time to get any of this information out there, so we sound like we're raving lunatics sometimes. But I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. You guys are. My question to Harry, can you think of any way...
David has a question for you. Hold on one second, Harry.
Go ahead.
Okay, Derek.
Please, sir. Can you think of any way that we can more effectively, because we do have a lot of low-info people that you mentioned in the United States, we're consumers, and consumers are programmed to be that way. We're narcissistic, self-absorbed. We don't pay much attention to the world outside of our little world. We're we're talking to the choir. We're talking to the academics and the people that already know these issues, and we need to get the message out in a more simple way. Can you think of any way of making it less complicated? Because that's another ploy by the scientists. They say, well, it's a complicated problem. No, it's not. It's no more complicated than an armed robbery. We need slogans like that that will totally...
There are several reasons to address this.
Oh, wait. Let's see. David, did you ask a question? And Harry, your answer.
Yeah, my question to Harry was, can you think of any way we can be more effective in getting the information out to the low-info folks?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Harry?
I think that there are many ways we can try. I mean, the first is to be most intelligent as possible about media strategy, and as you say, getting clear what the narrative and explanations are. And there's a very good website called If Americans Knew, which people can Google, and we'll link to it on the site, which shows the basic facts of the conflict, how many have been killed and injured and imprisoned, and et cetera, and et cetera. And that kind of basic information is really striking, and people of the world, including in the United States, will not accept that. Another thing to do is to try and use modern forms of communication to make it, I want to say, sexy to people again, to make this kind of injustice and issue of conscience something which people feel they can be preoccupied with. And using videos, documentaries, social media campaigns, and etc., we can attack, if you like, the ordinary person in a way that couldn't have been done, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of the development of these kinds of technologies and because of new styles of communication. So there definitely are serious and rational reasons to be hopeful and to monopolize these advantages that we have.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that ifamericans.knew.org, is it .org? Is Alison Weir's website. It's phenomenal.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's fact-filled of information. I recommend that. Also, I recommend Google Palestinian Map. That will inform people. When they
exactly.
Yeah.
It shows the disappearing of the land year by year and etc. You know, the caller mentioned a really interesting point of concision, that you sound crazy talking about all of this stuff in 30 seconds or a minute on the radio, because the ordinary person frankly doesn't know what you're talking about. You're talking about something so far away from what they normally hear, it's difficult for their mind to take it in. And American Jewish scholar Noam Chomsky, I was mentioning earlier, talked about this, that when he was once not interviewed for a program, he was told it was because of concision, that he just couldn't explain his ideas because they were so not normal in a way that they could package and sell in 30 seconds or in 3 minutes. And this media structural failure, or certainly the way the media is, that it's all time-orientated and etc. We have to know the facts and be quick on our feet and try and get over that problem and package a more compassionate understanding of the Israel-Palestine conflict into 30 seconds or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I was just on a radio program, Thursday morning, 6 a.m. I was on this program. It's the Jesse Lee Peterson show. And it was like I had to answer these complicated, sophisticated issues in like a split second. And I said, you're doing a disservice to your listeners, because these questions require a thorough explanation so that listeners can understand what the issue is. For instance, he brought up the Voting Rights Act. You cannot talk about the Voting Rights Act in like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? How it's significant. All the aspects of it and why it's important that what the Supreme Court is saying about the Voting Rights Act is inaccurate. You can't just condense it like that. I kind of got off on a tangent, but yeah, I experienced that, and that's what the mainstream media does. It tries to get you to condense sophisticated information into a sound bite. That's what they try to do.
And the thing is that the State of Israel, its media spokesperson, and its international supporters, those pro-Israel campaigners around the world, including in these countries, in Arab countries, in the Middle East, they are very, very, very well strategized, thought out, and prepared for dealing with the media. And that's a kind of advantage which the supporters of the Palestinians or the Palestinians themselves generally do not have in comparison. So there's a real structural disadvantage which we have to try and combat that.
We have to try and combat that, and we are combating that, hopefully, I'd like to think, with this show, Palestine Today. So let me give out the call.
Show by show, we're going to do it.
Show by show, we're going to do it. I love your optimism, Harry. I'm not kidding. I'm not so optimistic, maybe because I have a few years on you, you know? So, so anyway, let me give out the call-in number again. That's 1-888-909-1050. If there are any calls, please feel free to call in. Also, you heard our sponsor is the Washington Report Middle East Affairs. Washington Report Middle East Affairs. That's WRMEA.org. I want to suggest that everyone read up on that. Go to that site, read up on that information, and also even subscribe to them. They are a sponsor of this show, and I'm very grateful. Another sponsor of this show is Henry Clifford. He sponsors the show, but you know we have to pay for our airtime, and we have a limited amount of time that the show has been sponsored. So only 14 Saturdays. If you'd like to sponsor this show, or if you'd like to donate, you can go to my website, thekathleenwellsshow.com. And now it looks like we have a call. Wesley, you want to take it? We've got a call coming in. He's actually answering it. So we've got, 6 more minutes before. You want to say who's online, Wesley? Oh, he's trying to get their name. I hear him say he's asked them for their name 3 times. Can you imagine here?
While we're waiting, I will just play.
His name's Jeff, and he's from Modesto, I believe.
Okay, let's hear from Jeff. Okay, hi Jeff from Modesto, California.
No, not from Modesto, Mendocino.
Oh,
but I mean they begin with M, but that's about as far as it goes, and we have living human breathing in both places, but this is not occupied territory up here. Okay. I don't know about Modesto, but most of America, in terms of politics, is occupied territory. And it's great to hear you and Harry doing this program from San Bernardino. Which is part and parcel of an occupied territory politically. If you look around the political landscape of Los Angeles, you can see that, and the Los Angeles area. But I just want to say, it's really great that this series is on the air, and hearing Harry report on the situation in Palestine and Gaza is really critical. I just want to say good work and keep it up.
Oh, thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and we want to continue to bring information to American listeners about Palestine. That's the whole point of the show. We want to inform American listeners, and specifically KCAA listeners, about what's going on in Palestine. Hey, you can't rely on your mainstream media to get the information. It's not there, so don't look. It's not there. What do you say, Harry? What do you think?
You know, the thing is that I think radio is a great platform for us to do this, and we will be able to, in these coming weeks, do things which haven't been done before. When I'm back in Gaza, I'll be producing radio reports from the ground for the show. I will be able to speak to Palestinians regularly, as I said before. We'll be in the programs, in the future shows, looking at the state of the international solidarity movement and prominent campaigns for Palestinian rights, like the BDS campaign, global campaign, and various other broader geopolitical realities afflicting the Palestinians. We've been able to do a lot, actually.
Okay, I'm very excited about it. We've got what do we have, Wesley? 2 minutes left? We have 4 minutes left. So in the last 4 minutes, how would you like to close off, Harry?
I'm going to play a clip from a media interview I did on Malaysian TV just for a short while before we close off. Just a clip of a point that I made, which is something I want to communicate to our audience. So I'll go ahead and do that now. 6 days before the war started recently, Israeli force was responsible for the killing of a 13-year-old innocent playing football. If you go back a few months, for example, I was in Gaza over the summer last year when innocent men, women and children were blown up as well. So the point is that the history of months and years back is one of Palestinians being drip, drip, drip killed. So actually, the recent war, although it's obviously quantitatively and qualitatively far worse, the actual general situation of insecurity has been well ongoing. And it's still going on, Kathleen, and that's the point. And that's why it's important to have this program to reduce the media impunity of this occupying state, to communicate to the American audience what's actually going on a weekly basis.
Okay, well, we're coming to a close now. Also, as I mentioned, I'd like people to go to the Washington Report, Middle East Affairs. That's Washington, WRMEA.org. Check out the information there. Also go to, and they're a sponsor of this show, show them some love. And also go to ifamericans.org, which is Alison Weir's website. Go there and check out that information and show her some love, too. Also, another sponsor of the show is Playgrounds for Palestine. Playgroundsforpalestine.org. Go there, too, also, and show them some love. We've got a lot of love to give, right? So we'll be back next week with more of Palestine Today. Thank you, Harry, for joining me this Saturday.
Thanks for this. See you next week.
Okay, see you next week. Thank you very much, Wesley. Bye.
Ciao.
KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM. The station that leaves no listener behind.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Chris Earl Phillips. For this afternoon, 20% chance of showers, mostly cloudy, gradually becoming sunny, and a high near 63. Tonight, mostly clear, low around 44. Tomorrow, sunny, and a high of 76. Tomorrow night, clear, low around 46. On Monday, sunny, and a high near 80. Monday night, mostly clear with a low around 46. On Tuesday, sunny, and a high of 82. Tuesday night, mostly clear, and a low around 48. That's your weather for this hour. From the station that leaves no listener behind, NBC News Radio, AM 1050, KCAA.
Here's your latest ski report on 1050 KCAA. Plenty of trails open around Southern California. Don't have to go far. Mountain High today has 14 runs, 5 lifts. They've got 2 ways up, 15 back down at Mount Baldy. They've added an inch of new snow. Snow Summit has collected 14 inches of brand new powder. That's on top of 4 feet of snowpack, 10 lifts, 30 runs. Mammoth Mountain, 7 inches of new snow. That's on 10 to 15 feet of snowpack now, 150 trails and 27 lifts at Mammoth Mountain. If you have a getaway plan to Lake Tahoe, North Star, California is a great option. They've got 5 inches of new snow just in the past couple of days. Almost 2 feet of new snow this week. 8 feet of snowpack now at North Star, California. 92 trails, 15 lifts, and the North Face Park and Pipe Open Series continues today. Heavenly at the Lake Tahoe area. 97 runs. They've got 26 lifts. 6 inches of brand new powder sitting on 6 feet of snowpack. They've got 4,800 acres of skiable terrain now at Heavenly. SkiHeavenly.com before you head out there. That's the latest from the slopes. I'm Jen Austin for 1050 KCAA.
Earth, sky.
On a dark night where you can see the band of the Milky